Good day, second year English literature students. Today we are going to start with your second paper, which comprises of prose and fiction. Prose and fiction. The paper consists of short stories, essays, and a novel. So today we are going to start with an essay by E.V. Lucas, and the title of the essay is Third Thoughts. Now, when we consider this title, Third Thoughts, what comes in your mind? Generally, we say, I am giving a second thought to it. What do you mean by second thought? Second thought means that we reconsider our decision, we reconsider whatever we have thought about something. And third thought is a humorous extension of this popular term, second thought. So, in this essay, we come across humor and satire. It consists of humor and satire. There is humor also, and when we read this essay, we see that very dexterously the writer has developed the story and how we bargain with our own consciousness, how we bargain with our own souls. So, this story was told to me by my friend. It is my destiny, said he, to buy in the dearest markets and to sell, if I succeed in selling at all, in the cheapest. So now, in the very first sentence, the essay says that this story was told to me by my friend, and he says it is my destiny. Destiny means it is my fate that whenever I go to buy anything, I get it at a very, very high price. But if I sell it, luckily, if I'm lucky to sell it, I sell it at a very low price. So I'm very unlucky buyer and unlucky seller. Usually, indeed, having tired of a picture or a decorative article, I have positively to give it away, almost to make its acceptance by another a personal favor to me. Now he says that whenever I go to the market to sell something, because I get bored of many things, so I don't get proper price for it. But the other day was marked by an exception to this rule, so striking that I have been wondering if perhaps the luck has not changed and I am, after all, destined to be the most enviable thing, the successful dealer. So he narrates the story of one incident of his life when there was not the general rule, but it was an exceptional day. Why? Because exception. And what was the general rule of his life? That he buys anything at a very high rate and he sells at a very cheap rate. But that day was an exception. So he began to think that luck has changed. It happened thus. In drifting about the old curiosity shops of a cathedral city, I came upon a portfolio of watercolor drawings, among which was one that to my eye would have been a possible Turner. Even if an earlier owner had not shared that opinion or hope, and set the magic name with all its initials so often placed in the wrong order beneath it. Now, one day when he was in the market in the cathedral city, he came upon a portfolio of watercolor drawings, and suddenly he saw a painting which he thought was an original Turner. Original Turner means which was originally made by the great painter Turner. But what happened that he thought that the earlier owner of that painting might not have noticed this. How much is this? I asked scornfully, because it was looking as if it was fake. Well, said the dealer, if it were a genuine Turner, it would be worth anything, but let's say 10 shillings. You can have it for that, but I don't mind if you don't, because I am going to London next week and should take it with me to get an opinion. So the dealer said that it is a fake painting, it is just an imitation, it's not the real one, and if it would have been a real one, then I would get some worth for it. But maybe if you want to take, you can take it, but I'm taking it to London next week for its test, whether it is original Turner or not. I pondered. Pondered means he began to think. Mind you, I don't guarantee it, he added. So he says, I don't guarantee that it is originally made by Turner. So don't come to me complaining. I gave him 10 shillings. By what incredible means I found a purchaser for the drawing at £50, there is no need to tell. For the point of this narrative resides not in bargaining with collectors, but bargaining with my own soul. Now he says that his luck arose, and what happened? The thing which he bought in 10 shillings, he found a buyer for it who was ready to buy it in £50. So he says, this story is not about that how I got that incredible seller buyer, but the point is that how I bargained with my own soul. The astonishing fact remains that I achieved a profit of £49, and I was duly elated. I then began to think. Naturally, when he got very good price for that painting, he was elated. Elated means he was very, very happy. And naturally, he was happy because that day was an exception to the rule. And what was the rule? That he used to buy at a very high price and sell at a very low price. So he began to think. The dealer, so my thoughts ran, in that little street by the cathedral west door, he ought to participate in this. Now, he is not a professional businessman, so he has some goodness in his heart. So he says that I have earned a lot, I have gained a lot. He has gained 49 pounds. So he says that the dealer who sold me this should have some share in my profit. So he behaved very well to me, and I ought to behave him well. It would be only fair to give him half. So his pure conscience is asking him to share his profit half. So he says he is ready to share his profit to the dealer. Thereupon I sat down and wrote a little note saying that the potential Turner drawing, which no doubt he recollected, had turned out to be authentic, and I had great pleasure in enclosing him half the proceeds, as I considered that only the just and decent course. Now he began to write a letter to the shopkeeper from whom he bought that Turner. He said that potential painting of Turner has turned out to be a genuine painting, and I have gained a lot from it by selling it. So I thought that it is very just to share half of my profit with you. So having no stamps and the hour being late, I did not post it and went to bed. Now you see how time passes and how the passing time changes your decision. So he says that I could not post the letter because he had no stamps, and naturally it was night, so he went to bed. At about 3:30 a.m. I woke widely up, and according to custom began to review my life's errors, which are in no danger of ever suffering from loneliness. See the satire in this sentence. He says that I got up at 3:30 and started to think on the mistakes of my life. So he says that I'm making a mistake recently also, presently also. From these I reached by way of mitigation my recent successful piece of chaffering, and put the letter to the dealer both under examination and cross examination. See, as if the letter is the convict and he is being examined and cross examined. So he says that I began to think about that letter, whether I should post that letter or whether I should not, whether I should share half of my profit with the dealer or not. Why? So my thoughts ran, gave him half. Why give him half? Now see, the first thought came to his mind that he should share the half of his profit. Now he says, why should I share half of my profit? Why be so quixotic? Why be so generous? This is no world for quixotry. It was my eye that detected the probability of the drawing, not his. He had indeed failed, did not know his own business. Why put a premium to inaptitude? No, a present of say £10 at most would be more than adequately meet the case. Now he says that why should I pay half to the dealer? He did not do his business properly. He did not know his business. and he did not even know that it was a true painting by Turner. So why should I pay him for this irresponsibility? So he says, no, I am not going to give him half, but I will share with him £10. Sleep still refusing to oblige me. I took a book of short stories and read one. Then I closed my eyes again and again began to think about the dealer. Why? So my thoughts ran, give him £10. Now you see, again he is bargaining with his soul. How a person thinks and thinks over his decision and how the decision changes. Now he says, why even give him £10? It will only give him a wrong idea of his customers. None of other of whom would be so fair, so supporting as I. He will expect similar letters every day and be disappointed. Now you see, he is hiding his own feelings and he is showing as if he is showing sympathy to the dealer. He says, if I give him £10, then he would expect similar letters every day, and then when he won't get similar letters of containing £10 every day, then he would become bitter. He will expect similar letters every day and be disappointed, and then he will become embittered and go down the vale of tears, a miserable creature. Now you see, he wants to save his money, but he says that I am showing sympathy to the dealer, so that is why I am not sending him money. He looked a very nice old man too. A pity, nay, a crime to injure such a nature. No, £10 is absurd. £5 would be plenty. 10 would put him above himself. Now you see how a person bargains with his own conscience, how a person bargains with his own soul. He is trying to hide his own greed. But what happens? What actually he is thinking? He is becoming greedy inside. But he is not accepting the fact. He says that I am sympathizing with the dealer, that is why I am not sending him the amount. So he says, again he changes his decision and says that 10 would put him above himself and I will give him £5. While I was dressing the next morning, I thought about the dealer again. Now you see, these thoughts are again and again recurring in his mind. Why should I? So my thoughts ran directly. I had for the first time in my life brought off a financial coup, spoil it by giving a large part of the profit away. Now he says that for the first time in my life, I have gained something financially by selling an article for the first time, for the very first time. Now, why should I share my profit with anyone? Was it not that the flying in the face of the goddess of business, whoever she may be? Was it not asking her to disregard me only a day or so after we had at last got on terms? Now he says that the goddess of business and I have always been enemies. But just 1 or 2 days before, the goddess of business is smiling on me. Smiling on me means at last she has come to terms with me and she has given me a lot of profit. So after a long period of time, we have become friends, and now why should I break this friendship? Why should I arouse her anger? There is no fury like a woman scorned. Fury means anger. So he says, I should not scorn this lady. And who is the lady? The goddess of business. It would probably be the end of me. City magnates are successful probably just because they don't do these foolish impulsive things. Impulse is the negation of magnetism. Now he says, to act impulsively means to act on the first thought. So I should not act foolishly, I should not act emotionally. And he gives example of the city magnates. City magnates means the great rich businessmen of the city. He says they are rich today because they have not given in to emotionalism. They have not surrendered to feelings. And even I should not do so. Impulse is the negation of magnetism. If I am to make any kind of figure in this new role of the fine arts spectacular, so my thoughts continued, I must control my feelings. Now he says that I should act with my mind, not act with my heart. No, £5 is absurd. A dossier of £1 will meet the case. It will be nothing to me, or at any rate nothing serious, but a gift of quail and manna from clear sky to the dealer, without however doing him any harm. £1 will be ample, accompanied by a brief note. Now, first he thought that he will give him half of his gain. Then he said that he will send £10 to the dealer. Then he came down to £5, and finally he says that £1 will be okay. It won't cost me anything, at least not much, and it won't put the dealer above himself. £1 will be ample, accompanied by a brief note. The note was to the effect that I had sold the drawing at the profit which enabled me to make him a present, because it was an old and perhaps odd belief of mine that one should do such kind of things. Good luck should be shared. Now he again began to write a note, and he tried to enclose £1, and he said that it is good to share one's profits, so I am sharing it with the dealer. I had the envelope in my pocket containing the note and the check when I reached the club for lunch. And that afternoon I played bridge so disastrously that I was glad that I had not posted it. So he wrote the note, put £1 in it, put it in his pocket, and went to the club, and he lost at the game of bridge. So finally he felt glad that he had not posted it. In the last stanza he said, gift of quail and manna from the clear sky to the dealer. Quail and manna means a gift. It is a biblical allusion, a reference from the Bible when Jesus gave the gift of quail and manna to people. So the dealer would be very happy to receive this unexpected gift. So he says, I was glad that I had not posted it. See, from half of the profit he came down to £10. From £10 he came down to £5. From £5 he came down to £1. And again in the last he says that I am glad that I did not post it. Zero sharing. After all, so my thoughts ran as I destroyed the envelope and its content. See, now in the end he is destroying the envelope and the note also. Such bargains are the part of game. Buying and selling are perfectly straightforward matter between the dealer and customer. The dealer asks as much as he thinks he can extort, and the customer, having paid it, is under no obligation whatever to the dealer. The incident is closed. Now, a very, very interesting ending of the essay. He says that buying and selling is a perfectly straightforward thing. He sold to me, and at the prices which he thought would meet his purpose, and I bought it. So this buying and selling has closed now. Now I don't have any relationship to that dealer. Why should I think that I should share my profit half or 1/4 or even 1/10 of it? So says the dealer asks as much as he can extort. The dealer already has taken maximum money from me, so why should I give him? And the customer, having paid it, is under no obligation whatever to the dealer. The incident is closed. Now this is the end of the essay, and E.V. Lucas has very beautifully drawn the incident in a very interesting manner. How the dealer sells it to the buyer, and the buyer, the narrator, he buys it, and at last he sold it gaining £49. And first of all, see, our conscience always speaks the truth. Our conscience always shows us the right path. So it is on us whether we pay attention to the advice of our conscience or we ignore it. So the pure conscience of this buyer says that he should share half of the amount, but he ignores the voice of the conscience and he comes down to giving nothing to him. And how he is bargaining with his own soul that no, I should give this amount, no, I should not give this amount, I should decrease it, and decreasing, he came down to giving nothing. He has used a lot of allusions where he says quail and manna. And see, even the title Third Thoughts is a humorous conversion of the saying Second Thoughts. And see how he thinks and rethinks and come down to giving zero contribution to the dealer. So this is a very interesting essay, and we have a lot of talkings, we have a lot of dialogue also in this essay to make it interesting and more dramatic. And the language of this essay is simple, interesting, filled with satire, and also filled with humor. Thank you.